Good evening, everyone. My name is Sylvia Xihui Liu, Assistant Dean on the Learning Network Development at the Faculties of Architecture and Planning, Thammasat University. I'm here with also Ajahn Chittiporn, the Director of Design Management Program at the Thammasat Design School. So this is the fourth event that we organized, the online lecture for this evening. I think it's our honors to host the joint lecture with PolyU at Hong Kong. So we would like to welcome the keynote speakers, Dr. Sylvia Liu and Renato Kern, as well as the online participants. For this event, the theme is service design in leading industry will be explored by both of our keynote speakers. So the first topic, systematic views on service design, successful project with international leading industries, leading brand, will be provided by Dr. Sylvia from PolyU. And following by the next topic, service design nations, a case studies on Estonia by Renato Kern from TDS. So for my part, it's a pleasure to welcome both of the keynote speakers and online audiences. And if you have any questions, you can either write down on the Zoom chat or you can share your idea after the talk. We also would like to have an open discussion at the end of the lecture. So we should have about 40 minutes Q&A and open discussion. So please enjoy, and let me give the screen to Dr. Sylvia for now.
Okay, thanks, Far. Hello, everyone. I'm Sylvia. I'd like to share my screen first. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah,
perfect.
The whole slide, right? Yeah. Okay. So yes, my topic is a systematic view on service design, and especially to sharing some successful projects we're working with international leading brands in past a few years, which is actually based on our second semester. So if any of you have the chance to join us as an exchange student, you will actually participate those we call the multidisciplinary projects. So when I have the topic discussing with our teams talking about service design, the main issue we argue actually what is a service design, because here we don't actually particularly emphasize on service design itself. Instead, we're talking about the whole system, as we say, product and service system. So that's actually is a main topic I want to talk. Actually, is also the perspective from us to look at the service design. So that's the reason we call a systematic view. I don't want to be a kind of very long lecture. So just 3 key points to sharing what is a systematic view on service design. The first is how we understand the service. So as a part of the product service system, I don't know, maybe you already learned a lot about the service design and the product service system, but I just put it into a spectrum to explain the concept. And the second part, what the difference between the service industry and the manufacturing industry, the traditional manufacturing industry. We think the most different is actually service design is emphasized and focused on the people. But traditional manufacturing industry is more focused on the physical, tangible things. So that actually another keywords help us to generate a systematic view on service design. And then the third part, when we're talking about the service design into a system, actually the main purpose is to seeking the new business opportunities, which is not based on existing problems. Instead, we are talking to explore the problem and define the problem. So this will be, I put them into very simple slides, 3 basic concepts to explain our systematic view on service design. Okay, so the 3 concepts, right? First of all, what is service? When we're talking service, actually, we put it into this, the spectrum. So the left side, we're talking about tangible things, and the right side is intangible. So normally, when we're talking service design, we are talking the right side of the whole slides. So like we have the 100% pure service, like teaching. But like currently teaching, if we're talking this seminar is like a teaching, this is not 100% service. because we use the facilities, right? You use a aerophone, we use desktop, laptop, right? So those is a product we use. That's mean we actually is in the middle of this spectrum. So that's mean this service actually is also supported by some tangible products. This is a function for us. This will be a kind of the spectrum for us to understand the position of the service here. And then this comes to more discussion about what the relationship between the product design, service design, and this will be the triangle we put the whole system. Originally, when we're talking, okay, one side is product design, another side is a service design. But when we're talking the systematical view, we actually generate more idea is we actually have service-based product. That means we emphasize the product, the domain elements, the domain content is product. And we will add some service elements in the system. Another way is we may focus on the service industry. The domain content is service. We add some product elements in. So like currently teaching, our teaching here is like the product-based service because the main content is service, teaching as a service. But we use some products. And on top of the whole triangle, actually is talking the system view about how to integrate product and the service. So this is actually the system we look at the relationship between product and service. It's also the system we identify what is a service design. Okay. So the second point, we're talking service. The characteristic about the service is a people center, which is also reflect a lot of the things. One thing actually is what mean people. For example, same as a DTB and also our IDBM, we are talking integration and also cross-disciplinary about business design and technology, right? But for business, they normally study customer or consumer. But for design students, if you are starting from design in design program, in your undergraduate, you know, always we're talking user research. We're starting a lot of the people as a user instead of the people as a consumer or customer. But the technology side, they look at the people as a human being. So as some of my colleagues, especially they do like the ergonomics, they measure the body, okay, they measure the head, the eyes, the ears, but they look at the people as just a body, right? The human being, instead of your emotion and any other behaviors. So this actually, when we focus on particular discipline, actually they just look at the people from their perspective, instead of a holistic view of people. So we think that the idea of the service design, another difference, actually they transfer the view angle from the product focus, which is traditionally emphasize a tangible physical stuff, into the service. Service actually should be a people center. So the people integrate our understanding, people as a consumer, people as a customer, people as a user, and also as a human being. So this is another point when we bring into the project, we're working with those leading brands. So talking about, okay, what will be the way we can seek the opportunities? So this is the second point. And then the third point is, we actually is talking, we are not solving problem, because currently most of the design school worldwide, they still focus on the basic design skills. Of course, we need that. And then, but those design skills actually is applied to solve the problems. But normally the problems is given by your clients or partners. But for IDBM, also when we're talking about what will be the value can create by design, we are talking actually, we can define the problems. That's mean we can searching the opportunity, seeking the opportunity, evaluate them, and then define them. So this actually also the way we can take the leadership in the whole innovation process. So what means that why we're talking about instead of solving problem, we move forward to define the problem. Because if we're talking the middle of the center of this spectrum, this line is no problem. So the problem, if we solve the problem, is mean just no problem, right? But this doesn't mean you create a better world. So what mean when we can explore the problem, explore the opportunity, and define the problem, what actually design can contribute to, or let's say we apply the design thinking in business context, is mean we're starting from the understanding about the future. What will be a better world from the people perspective to look at the future? So the starting point is the right hand of this line, a better world. Then we go back to review the existing situation, the conditions. That's the way we define the problems. So this is usually the logic when we're talking, okay, so this is a different way to look at the value created by design. If we think this is a service design, yes, because this is not, well, how we define a better world is not depends on currently physical words, but instead is based on a people as a real person, what your expectation for your future life or the better world of the community. Then we comes back to review the reality, the facts at this moment. Then we can define the problems. So you will see actually the vision and the scope we can working on one project is quite different. One side, if you say, okay, I'm the problem solver, I solve the problem, that is only me. Okay, you solve the problem, but this doesn't mean you make a people's life better. But you really look at the future as a design vision, you actually can create a better world, so define the opportunity. So this is a third viewpoint when we're talking a systematical view about the service design. So quickly, we just highlight these three parts here. And then I want to move on to sharing every year, our IDBF program, we're working at least 3 industry partners for every year, every cohort. We have the first project starting from now, the first week of the first semester, which we are working with normally a Hong Kong local NGO partner, because that is not so complex, which the partner is not from the business context, pure business context, is NGO, right? And it's a local, so the size of the issue is not so big. Then we will move on to the second project we call the regional. Normally, regional and the business partner is more complex compared with the first project. So the regional is the Asia Pacific clients in the region. And the second semester, we will move on to international leading brands. We don't have actually the limitation to the industry sectors those brands in, because we believe we are training our students with a way of the thinking and the viewpoint with a kind of the systematical view to look at the opportunity. So this actually the previously 3 concept actually is a kind of the basic concept we're training the students since the first project. But finally, we put it into the large project in the second semester here. So here I want to quickly sharing 2 groups of work, 2 groups students work, and for 2 projects. We have the 2018, we're working with Renault. If you know, that is a French automobile brand. And 2020, we're working with IVF, international flavor and the fragrancy. I think they also have very good market in Thailand. So I want to quickly sharing our students' work, how they integrate when we are talking this 3 concepts in their project. So normally when we're working on this lady brands, we ask them for not the questions, not the problems, because we have to communicate with those clients. We won't help you to solve the problems, because if the problem is well defined by you, you can find a design consultancy, management consultancy, because they are leading brands. So they can find a very good partner worldwide. And I have to tell them, give us the challenge you cannot solve. And normally it's, takes over 1 year to communicate with them, because they never trust a design school can solve this kind of problems. But I have to teach them, yes, we can. And you should give us a challenge. You cannot solve it. You cannot find any design consultancy, management consultancy, solve the problems and bring this challenge to us. So this is a part we are very proud about that. And also every year the result of the project is very successful. Our clients is very happy about the result. Okay, so there's a very many interesting story behind those collaboration, but here due to the time issue, I just want to sharing the students' work to you. Okay, for the 2018, the challenge Renault gave to us is brand awareness. The challenge actually is Renault, they are so proud of their products and the brands. They think their strategy is quite successful in Europe market. And they say we are the only one automobile brand have our F1 team, because you see the Mercedes-Benz, BMW, they don't have their Formula 1 team, but we are the only one car brand have our Formula 1 team. So they say they have very good design, brand strategy, and they say okay, compare with Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Volkswagen. We actually deliver exactly the same model on China market and Asia market, because for other brands, they actually deliver kind of the simpler version, the model on China market, because they feel the Chinese market is a little bit lower than the Europe market. So the Renault side, we are the best. And then in terms of the models sell in the Chinese market, we have keep the same quality in the Europe market. And also in terms of the brand strategy, brand image, they think they are also very good, because they are French brands, right? But the issue actually, if you ask the Chinese people, do you know Renault? Even they are car owner. Actually, most of them, they don't know what is Renault, what is a Renault brand name. So this actually very confused by Renault. So many years, they don't understand. We do the similar strategy, exactly the same model on the different market. We are better than other international brands. But why Chinese people don't buy ours? So this is a challenge. They want to raise up the brand awareness in China market. So we have the study, but we won't say we will solve them. This is actually a problem for them. But for us, we don't say this is a problem. We are looking for the future. What will be the opportunity for Renault? It's not only about how to sell your products on market, but actually how you can take the leadership in the market and to satisfy expectation from the Chinese people side for the future car marketing. So this is something we actually communicate with Renault and tell them this is a thing we can bring to you. And our students actually all working on. So they actually, all the 5 teams deliver their final project solution with a product service system. So they are not talking about the product, the car itself. Instead, they're talking a whole system, including the car, including the service. And also they're talking about the people center, who are exactly the consumer, the people needs for the car. And then talking about the original nation if they are from France, what will be the stress of a French brand of automobile? So this will be the opportunity the team bring into their final solution. Now I will show you the video because for all the team, they need to make the final report, including research and the solution, but also a video to tell the story about the whole solution. So now I'm sharing the video for you.
Vicky is a self-expressive girl. She loves different cultures, arts and crafts, finding different ways to explore her inner self. Today, she visited a hip area after work to ease her mind. Oh, what a lovely piece of art. I wonder what this is about. Vicky scanned the QR code and found out it is an European Encore artist collaboration with La Vie Partnership. She wanted to know more about this lifestyle brand. It seems like a mixture of lifestyle quality and art by a French car maker, Renato. This seems interesting. It is getting late and her husband is waiting at home. Maybe they'll explore more next time. After dinner, the couples are having some time of their own. Vic came across with an article of La Vie program she saw earlier and let David know straight away. This seems intriguing. We had been planning to buy a car for a while. This lifestyle seemed to suit us. The couple spent most of their savings on the wedding and property, so they had to delay their plan of getting a car. Moreover, there's simply too much hassle from financing, maintaining, or simply getting a number plate. Car purchase is always a big binding decision, but in La Vie by Renato, it seems very flexible and adaptable with a subscription plan. David think, this car looks great, and we can keep our options open to more opportunities in work, relocation, or even having a baby. Vicky can't wait to discover those unique and exquisite workshops she found. Let's go visit the hub and find out more about La Vie subscription. The couple arrives at the hub and are greeted by Pierre, the manager of La Vie. He shows them around the hub and explains, subscribing as a member will allow them to access any La Vie hub in China, allowing them to explore an exquisite lifestyle via a range of private workshops, such as Dine and Wine, Active and Health, Culture and Arts, even public space for exhibition and co-working. Vicky really loves what she is hearing, learning another way to express herself. Pierre invited them to join a coffee-making workshop and get a sense of La Vie by Renato. The couple enjoyed the time with their own hand-brewed coffee, feeling that they are already part of this community. Pierre continued explaining how La Vie subscription works, a range of packages with a flat monthly fee, vehicle options including maintenance, insurance, and licenses. This is just the couple have ever imagined. This will save them so much stress and hassle, and it's all down to the test drive. Both of them took the Clio for a spin, and they just love it. During the drive, they had already decided to be part of this La Vie community. Hooray! Pierre guides them through the documentation and processes. Now, the wait for the car begins. The La Vie package had arrived. A stunning bracelet car key and a smooth membership card. The car is waiting outside already. Now, it is time to sign up for more interesting activity. The range of selection is very broad, mostly catered for all family members from young to elderlies. Let's explore the full arrangement class first, then drag David along next time with me. This is gonna be interesting. Vicky is very excited for her class, and of course driving a new Renault. She's a fast learner. After a few months, she's already top of her class and having her work displayed in the La Vie exhibition. This sparks the idea of having her own flower shop. As for David, another business trips come by. This time, he doesn't waste time seek for cafe seats in between meetings in an unfamiliar cities. He just go to La Vie hub to work and meet his business partner, competing deals after deals. This time, Vicky managed to grab David to join the La Vie baking class. She signed themselves up as David's birthday treat, spending more time together and learning new skills from a famous chef from Le Cordon Bleu. They never knew making croissant is that difficult, but with the help of the pro, they instantly transformed the hub into a cafe in Paris. That's just marvelous. After a year, Vicky successfully opened her own online shop and became the best florist in her neighborhood. And David managed to strike more deals than he could ever get, becoming the regional manager. With both of their lives and car well taken care of, the couple grew into a bigger family. A little baby was born. And they were so glad they signed up to the La Vie by Renault subscription. Now, they will be able to move to a large apartment much closer to their parents' home. With La Vie, they could easily convert their Clio into an e-space for the whole family. La Vie will always be supporting their family in different chapters of life, making sure they will be able to pursue their own quality in life. La Vie to truly live.
Yeah, so I hope you can feel the 3 points I raised at the very beginning, right? So they actually is talking about the people center, because currently all the car brands actually is talking about, okay, this particular model is for this group of the consumer, but they never thinking about how when this consumer grows up, become older, and with the family partners and the families with kids, they change the needs. So there's a more information actually including here, the consideration, including like the sharing economy.
เธอโลกส่วนตัวสูง
Including like the sharing economy. So who the owner of the car, and then of course people center is always, and then the whole thing actually is more than a product, more than a service, a more kind of the very complex system. By the way, the video actually is very impressive by the Renato, our partner. They always talk, oh, that's a very funny video because the 3 key actors, totally there have 4 students in this group. They make this a video just in final 3 days because they need to including all the prototype. And then the 3 key actors are the 3 members. So the last member actually is a director of the whole video. So that's reason because we have the Renato vice president and the Asia Pacific marketing director, design director comes to our studio. And they notice, oh, that is in the video. So anyway, they always call this is a very funny video. But also all the venue you see, most of the venue is our innovation tower, our building of the School of Design. Hope you can come and visit us soon, right, after the pandemic. So this is the project I want to show you first. In the 2018, we're working with Renato. And last year, we're working with IFF. IFF actually is a top supplier of the flavor and the fragrance in the worldwide, which are American brands. They have very good business all over the world. But actually, they approached to us. They want to change their role, although they are the top brands in the flavor and the fragrance in the worldwide markets. But they all, because they do the B2B business, they don't actually face to the end user. And for their buyer, they always view them as a supplier. So they view them, okay, you're just a supplier of the raw material, but the raw material is a flavor and the fragrance. So they never including as a kind of with their buyer as a business partner, because a partner only actually view them very low status. So they want to change that. They want to be a partner with their original buyer. So how to change their role from a supplier to a partner of the innovation in their B2B business. So this actually is kind of the challenge they bring to us, because we're talking all kind of the like industry upgrading and transformation. So we're starting this project, and the IFF selected he's a main buyer, Li Bai, which is top brands in China market, laundry brands in Chinese market. So they compete with a P&G in 5 product categories in the laundry industry in Chinese market. So they picked the Li Bai as a partner to thinking, okay, how they can deliver some new ideas in the future laundry experience, which can be delivered together with Li Bai. And the 2020, we just have the COVID-19. So the team is actually this team, I showed the video, they actually also talking about the solution during the pandemic, and also how to create a future laundry experience. So I show you the video first.
In 2020, global pandemic hits all over the world, forcing people to wear masks and wash their clothes as often as possible. This is Amy, 25 years old designer, lives in Shanghai, who's excited about her life. Now she needs to wash her clothes every day, because when she get out, she's worried that her clothes can expose by virus. It's just that there's no time to do the laundry so frequently. And there's no laundry products that can support and ease her daily life. Everything seems too similar. She's looking for something different that can ease her daily life, especially during this situation. Now, Amy can have a peace of mind. As cities start to reopen, mobility starts to picking up, and travel are widely allowed. It is important to learn our lesson. Start to rethinking the way we live, rethinking the way we do laundry, to achieve clean and sustainable future.
So this is a second example from our last year project. Also, remember the key topics about systematic view of service design, and which is being a system integrate product and service. So far, I think that I will end my talk here and may give the stage to Renato, right?
Yeah, okay. Thank you for your sharing this project, and also I'm pretty sure that this is related to the very fruitful and also the challenging discussions at the end of the sessions. Shall you put your questions in the chat box? I mean the audience, or for the end Q&A sessions too. So now the next topic is service design nations, a case study on Estonia, will be shared by instructor Renato Kern. Right, Renato.
Yep.
Are you ready?
Hello.
Right. Okay.
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
The very most common question of the season. Here we go. Second one would be, can you see my screen? Very good. So thank you very much, Sylvia, for your talk on service design before mine. I'm going to expand a little bit. I'm not going to talk too much about service design as a user experience, but you will see what I mean as I go through the slides. It's looking at how service design can help us, a nation, grow and expand and attract more talent. So in a nutshell, when we're looking at service design, so service is something that helps someone to do or achieve something. So you usually would have the users, and then they would take a few steps into achieving their goals. If we look a little bit into the theory of it, so service design is very user-centric, as we already saw before. So it's really understanding people's needs and what they want to achieve, but it's also co-creative. So it's including different stakeholders, because it's not only about the user, but it's also who's providing the service, but also all the other kind of supporting activities that are happening. So it's a big network of things that have to happen so you can deliver a service. But it's also sequencing, right? As I showed before, the users, they have to go through a different set of steps until they achieve their goals. So there is a user journey, which is one of the tools we often use to understand the whole end-to-end experience. And throughout this journey, the users end up, encountering different touch points, which are things that they can keep or things that are memorable, that they would always refer back to their experience with the service. But moreover, service design is always very holistic. So it's, as said before, it's not only about user experience. It could be much more about, how companies operate. So we often see things as a user experience, but it's a little bit more complex than that. Let me just show you a few things that you can get as outcomes for service design. So let's start with the usual customer user experience. Buying a coffee every day, for example, you want to experience a coffee or a product, and then you have to go through a set of steps so then you can achieve your goal, which is getting a coffee. And if we're looking into products as a service, right? So think about Spotify. I want to listen to music. My goal is to listen to music on the go. So I'm using a product, a digital product. In this case, would be Spotify or any music streaming service. A little bit more interesting when you're looking at organizational structures. So for a company or for a company to deliver a service, they really have to understand things from their point of view, from the inside. So let's say you have a marketing team, and then you have a product development team, or IT department. So everything has to be well structured. So then your users can actually use your service. Often we get to see more flatline structures, so we don't get too many layers into companies, and service design can be a way of understanding how to optimize those structures, which ultimately would lead into changing how companies operate. In a way, the example here would be Food Panda or any food delivery companies, which is that Food Panda or Grab or any of those, they're actually logistic companies. They're not really a food delivery. So for the user, it's all about getting their food or getting their ride somewhere here and there. But then when you look at things from the inside, they're basically a logistics company that are connecting things. So they don't own any motorcycles, they don't own anything. So they're just operating in a different way that will enable the users to achieve their goals. So usually, again, you would see things simple as buying a coffee or listening to music, having lunch, making a call. And slowly things get a little bit more complex when it starts to go into getting vaccinated, for example. It's a very hot topic nowadays, or renting a room or applying for a loan. So those are all different goals. And when we look at it from a bigger picture, it always, on the green side, it's all about how the backstage. So in services, you have the front stage, which would be the user experience. And then you have the backstage providing those services. So you cannot expect a good service if a company or if a group of people cannot deliver that to you. So just going back to one, things get a little bit more confusing when you start getting into more complex outcomes that are depending on different kind of stakeholders. As said before, service design is very user-centric, and in here this would be a stakeholder map. So users try to use a service. They want to buy a coffee, that's the line of interaction. And then you would always have indirect stakeholders. But what happens, for example, if you're trying to take a vaccination? So user needs to take a vaccination or a vaccine, but then you encounter indirect stakeholders. This would be a public service, so that might not be a very clear example right now, but for example, I'll give you a few examples, but things can be stopped in terms of user experience when you're depending on public institutions that are directly related to services. And then, these kind of things, they might stop the users from achieving their goals. I'm going to go through a few examples. So as a user, I would like to just let me explain a little bit of my background. So I'm Brazilian with an Austrian-Hungarian background, so it's very complex. Then I moved to the UK. From that, I moved to Finland. And after Finland, I moved to Germany, and now I'm in Thailand. It's a little bit confusing, but I'll give you a few examples of things that I experienced. So when I moved to the UK, my goal was to open a bank account. Now, for me to open a bank account, it would be very simple. Renato goes to the bank, opens a bank account. However, in the UK, the bank would be asking me is, can we get your social security number? And then I would go to the social security number office. And then they said, for you to get your social security number, you need to have a job. And then I was looking for a job. But then when I was applying for jobs, people said, you can only apply for a job if you have a bank account. So it went into this crazy loop that was all blocked because of an outer kind of indirect stakeholder was actually not connecting to all the lines were not really connecting. So it took me 3 months. I'm happy to inform that I still have a bank account in the UK because it was such a pain and a hassle to keep it. It's still there anyways, moving on. So then I moved to Finland. I need to rent a room. For me to rent a room, I really need to have a job and a bank account. But all of that is directly related to my social security number. Again, it's who came first, the chicken or the egg. So it takes some time. Finland was a little bit more streamlined because the job was already there, so it was easier. But then it moves to the next one, which would be in Germany when I'm trying to sign up for internet services. So Renato needs to go to an internet provider, but it was not allowed. There was a little extra step in there because I was not directly renting my room. I was subletting it. So in theory, my contract was not in my name, and that created a whole kind of different problems. I couldn't get registered because I didn't have an address. Then I didn't have a bank account. Then I couldn't get the things into the name of my landlord. So honestly, I couldn't really sign up for internet access when I was living in Berlin. And all of that, when you think about this, it all goes down into bureaucracy, right? And bureaucracy is this necessary evil sometimes, because countries are, if you look at countries as a huge kind of company, there are so many moving parts. You have to think about security, you have to think about economics, you have to think about healthcare. There are so many moving parts and things have to work together in a way. And for them, to make sure that you are who you are, validating your ID. It can be very challenging if you have like a big monster country that, it's taking a lot of steps for you to. Can you guys hear me? Okay, very good. So, moment. There we go. So yeah, what we end up seeing is the user at the center is really trying to do things just to survive, just to have a life, basic things, access to, a house, maybe, a bank account, finding a job, health services. but it's always stopped, not always, but for many reasons, and I would say security would be the number one. Things can be very slowed down. So now I would like to welcome everyone to Estonia. I got to get to experience Estonia because I was living in Finland, and it's pretty much 2 hours away from there by boat. Just a very few quick facts. So Finland is here. Estonia is one of the countries in the Baltic region, next to Russia, next to Latvia. It's a very small country, and that explains why they are actually so so forward thinking, because it's very easy. It's 1.3 million people living there. I suppose in Hong Kong it's much more than that. I'm sure that Thailand, I mean, only Bangkok, it's about 10 million, if I'm not mistaken. But they have been taking a very interesting approach to put the citizen at the center of the whole service or the whole kind of equation. So citizen-centric country. And for over 20 years, they have been working very closely with the public and private institutions. So there is a very close partnership. Again, it's another very small country, so everyone has access to the internet, everyone is connected, but you own your own data, so it's not kind of loose anywhere, because it's very well thought through. And maybe two companies that you might know from Estonia, or you didn't know they're from Estonia, is Skype, was founded in Estonia, and TransferWise, it's a financial institution, also came from Estonian founders. So as said before, the whole point here is to have the citizens at the center of everything. So it's not the users, now the users are citizens, and everything is interconnected. So whatever you need to do, it's all interconnected by a series of networks of events. I'm going to very briefly go through a few of their key milestones, and I'll talk about some of them in detail. So in 2000, so that's just about over 20 years ago, they started the e-cabinet, which is using digital services to help support decision-making at the government. And, you know, from the user perspective, they developed this M-parking, which would be a mobile paying system for parking your car on the street. So it started very small. Then 2001, they built the foundations for this thing that's called X-Road. I'll get a little bit into detail about that, but it's basically the backbone of all their digitalization. So that's 20 years ago. Then, you know, slowly getting into ID cards, e-police system, then a mobile ID, all the health system was moved to the digital services. You can get prescriptions for your medicine, and that's 10 years ago. So for some countries, this might be too ahead. And now I'm talking as the Brazilian guy in here. Moving a little bit into smart cities. And then 2014, this very cool thing called e-residency. I'll get into detail in a second, but basically anyone can apply to be a citizen of Estonia. I'll explain in a moment. 4 or 5 years ago, the data embassy started. So basically all the data can be moved to other countries. That's for security reasons. And then going forward, it's all about AI, blockchain. So all this technology is kind of improving, but you have to think about this. What was the world like in 2000, the year 2000? I'm not sure if everyone was alive who is here in this chat, but it's 20 years. It's a long road in the making, and it keeps on going. So the X-Road was established in 2001, and as I said, and it's basically the data network that connects everything. So it's all about the internet, it's giving user support, but it's also kind of connecting banks. How do you connect everything? Because that's much needed if you want to integrate all the public services into one kind of massive network. But also you start getting, you know, the private institutions joining in, so then they can actually integrate really well and communicate to each other, which is key to what they have been doing lately. Then they developed their electronic ID system. So you still have a card, but it has almost like a SIM card. And this is how you validate your ID into anything, any public services. You have your ID card, and then they can know that you are who you are saying that you are. And that enables you to basically do everything in Estonia. And also it was a starting point for this e-residency scheme, which is coming soon. So with this card, a few things that you can do. You can file your taxes every year within 3 minutes, because throughout the year, they know who you are. They know, so your salary is being paid to your bank, but it's connected to your company's human resources department. So they all know how much money you're making, and then they already know a lot of information. Everything is very secure, by the way. So you can basically file all your taxes in 3 minutes, which is not a common thing. Then they started voting, I think it was 2007, I might be mistaken, but you can vote online, but not only for local elections, but also European elections, because Estonia is part of the European Union anyways. And mainly that's helping save costs, operational costs, because elections cost a lot of money. So you can do it from anywhere, and then you have a specific timeline that you can do it. So that's helping, the country streamline their democratic system. And then once things are moving a little bit forward, it's quite easy to open a business in Estonia. So in 3 hours, you can open a company basically with your ID and an email account. Everything is hassle-free, paperless, and it's also with the e-residency, which is possibly the next slide. It's all about allowing anyone in the planet to start doing business within Estonia, which is very interesting. Also, all your health information is stored securely. So if you need a prescription, you can get an e-prescription. You can go to the pharmacy, you get it without any hassle. But also the e-ambulance is an interesting thing because everyone is connected. So if you have an accident, it takes about 30 seconds for an ambulance to come to you because they know your position. So you just send a message. But also this enables you, because they have the data. You have the data stored. So you can, in the future, start looking into your personalized medicine plans. So all the records are kept. And if you need to see a different doctor, then they can access all your information. It's super easy. And again, if you think about the big buzzwords of today, smart cities are kind of popping everywhere. They are bringing autonomous buses, self-driving buses within Tallinn. But as they're driving, they're collecting data about number of passengers, rush hours, so different data points. Again, Estonia is super small, so it can be used as a test bed. So it's testing grounds for what other countries can do in terms of smart cities. And then, yeah, the e-residency, sorry. So any one of us in here, it sounds like I'm doing a big advertising for them. I'm not, but anyone can apply to be an e-resident in Estonia, which means that you can register a company in Europe, and then you have full access to European markets. So those are the numbers I got from their website. So up until now, there are about 70,000 e-residents. 13,000 companies. And what that enables Estonia is not only, become the super forward-thinking country, but you will be paying taxes in Estonia. So if you heard the term passive income, these guys are possibly the pros in that, because it's really supporting you to achieve, national growth. And yeah, one other thing is the data embassy, because they opened this. It's not a consulate or an embassy, so data is strategically placed somewhere else. That's for security reasons. Basically backups. So in case something happens, they would have the data stored somewhere else. Again, this is all because the government, they are very digital minded. from top to bottom, and for 20 years they have been digital first. So once they have access to all the data they can get, they can make faster decisions. So it's a really forward thinking, you know, avoid all the obstacles, bottlenecks that you can see in service design or in any bureaucratical institution, which is basically everywhere. So it's quite impressive what they have been doing. Those are a few examples of things that they are going to do. Not everything is there, but as said there, 99% of all their public services are now online. Basically everything with less bureaucracy. So starting a business, you can already do it. The interesting thing about childbirth is that if you're planning a child, the moment you go to a doctor and your wife, and she has a consultation, that triggers a series of events. So they are already booking your maternity leave. They are already, and this is without you noticing. They're already contacting doctors. What else? The moment the baby is born, they already have the information about your bank account, so they can pay you your maternity leave. So you're basically a citizen enjoying life. There are a few things that, for example, in case of getting married and divorcing, apparently it's still very challenging because too many moving parts, too many having this online could be a hassle, but they're working on this, as well as, you know, what happens when you die. So people have assets. So how do you transfer from one person to another? There could be different family members, different stakeholders. So they're still figuring it out, but it's in their pipeline. So they actually know exactly where they're going with their forward-thinking nation. So again, putting the citizen in the center of this whole process, it's actually made them rethink everything on how, you know, the citizens would access public institutions, how the public institutions actually reach out to citizens, what's the relationship between service providers, so the public sector, the private sector, sorry, and the public sector. So how do they all interconnect? And as kind of a result, so as a society, they are very much worry-free. So they can focus on doing their own kind of, do their work. It's helping them actually put a stamp into the map, because I'm not sure if you guys have heard about Estonia before, but I hope you learned something about them today. But in a small country of 1.3 million people, suddenly, you know, enabling 70,000 people to become e-citizens, that's quite a big number, and 13,000 new companies operating that. So that's the ease of entering the market there, which is also about investors, right? Because now people are investing in countries. So if you want to start a company, would you start it in a place where it's super complex and lots of bureaucracy, or you can do something like that? I'll leave it up to whoever is opening a company to do that. But also attracting talent. So it's not only about companies, but, you know, they have a lot of startups. They are one of the top startup countries in Europe, and all of that will eventually lead into economic growth anyway. So it's a long shot what they have been doing, but it seems like it's paying off, because again, there was 31 million euros paid in taxes just from the e-residents in the last few years. So that's quite a good amount for a small country, and it's just starting, right? So they're doing a lot of new cool things. I'll just leave here with key takeaways. So having a very citizen-centric approach, but it's supported by service design thinking. So just saying, okay, it's very easy for people to access their healthcare data. When you understand that it's all about the steps, how many steps or how easy it is, can we make it easier? So service design is actually supporting all of those experiences, and, you know, in a very lean approach. So we want them to achieve this. We want them to, you know, to buy a house. We want them to do as easy as possible, and not only our own citizens, but other people. And then again, by having a very strong private and public sector integration. It's a systemic thinking, as I said before. So it's how one depends or affects the other, and how can we actually go back into this lean, citizen-centric approach. One thing that it's quite interesting is they are not a technology-driven society, but technology enabled that. So I mean, 20 years ago, the technology we have right now, it didn't exist before. So they were kind of thinking ahead and saying, okay, this is the kind of technology, those trends could be coming, so let's go for that. So it's not based on or centric. So again, it's citizen-centric, not technology-centric. And again, because it's a small country, they can actually be very transparent in terms of building trust. So if things are working, great. A few years ago, there was a breach in security between with the ID card. So there was a flaw in the card. So they were very open, and people trust the services and systems. And as I said before, this could be a very interesting blueprint for other countries to learn from, and to help improve, to have better e-citizen or citizens contributing to their society. So that's it for my part. I would like to thank you all for.
Right, thank you, you too, Ajahn Renato, for giving a very clear example from Estonia. All right, shall we have some questions for this session first? If you feel free to put your questions to our chat box, or you can raise your hands for this sessions. Shall I start to have some kind of question first for Sylvia first, right? Actually, you mentioned a lot of case study from China, and I think which kind of key success that you can deal with brand awareness in China country.
Sorry, I just missed the last sentence.
All right. What kind of key success for brand awareness in China?
You mean the result of the Reno project?
Yeah, and actually the social China society is quite very unique by themselves, and it's quite very, what do you call them, a bit difficult to put something into like a brand awareness for them. So what kind of key successfuls for brand awareness for China people, for Chinese people?
Yeah, actually the project is sharing when we're working with Reno. At the very beginning, why I show this project in this talk, because traditional way for all the car brands, they are talking about, okay, when will be the new market, how I can maintain our current customer, right? But we are actually talking about a better world. So it's mean we don't actually need to consume more infrastructure, like we need to open those retail store to sell the car to the consumer, but instead of actually how we can contribute to a kind of the better lifestyle for the consumer. So this is not only about the Chinese market, actually. We wanted to bring this idea and contribute to the future trend for all the automobile brands. So at that time, 3 years ago, when we're working on this project, we noticed like Mercedes-Benz also developed a similar concept. We developed that, like they call the Mercedes-Me. So they built up a series of lifestyle experience center in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, they have one in the central. So they always combine with restaurant or best restaurant and coffee in the region. So there's not actually the showroom for car, but it's more like the experience center for the customer or potential customer to experience the brand. So they find that those restaurant or food community, right? So matching to the same core customer groups to working on that. So when we comes back to the Reno project, we challenge our students when they're working on the project. Okay, if you say this solution, this is the future of all the automobile brands, the car markets. So then what will be the unique opportunity for Renault? So why this only can be achieved, this opportunity by Renault, but not the Mercedes-Benz or not BMW? So this is also comes back to those questions to the characteristics of the brand itself. That's reason the video I showed, this team, they're talking about the life experience center, but they emphasize a lot of the French cultural elements. In actually the name, they call La Vie, right? It's from French, but they actually also give a name translation into a Chinese, which is also very fancy one. This is also, I would say, is our strength because we're talking same thing, but with a different language. So it's more like the coherence of your strategy into different market. Overall, we are not talking just Chinese market, but we actually is talking about what will be the future of this particular industry sector. For Renault side, actually, I think we have the final presentation for them. The core team they're working with us is Asia Pacific market, the marketing director, design director, and the vice president of the Renault Group, which is headquartered in Paris. But later when they notice the some concept is really interesting because we are not talking about, okay, we are talking future. So that is a 5 or 10 years of later future. For this project, every team, they do the budget, the financial budget about, okay, if you launch this, which will be the small step you can launch next year, like the 2019, like the roadmap. And then, so there's some idea they can immediately take into the implementation. So that's reason they have the second round presentation to the Asia Pacific, the whole senior management team. And then they grab some idea to promote their market immediately after the presentation. So yeah, some of our students also working together with them as a kind of the internship. Yeah.
Okay, that's such a good opportunity for students to have a experience over there as well, actually, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And anyone have more questions for Professor Sylvia? You can raise your hand.
Yeah. Otherwise, I can add one more question to both of our speakers. So from your talk, Sylvia, you gave the example from the Chinese market and the leading brand with when looking at the size of the population is very large, and the project that your student dealing with, I think is very specific to the specific group in the future also. And Renato gave example for Estonia, which I think the population is not that large. But both of the one of the similar things that I see on both of the presentation. So we cannot deny that the world is going through the digital trend, and Estonia is going faster, and yeah, Chinese is also going fast, I think. But how do we deal with the age difference when we're talking about the service design? Because we have learned from the online learning teaching experience, so we switch the role to be the learner as well. We learn and we learn and we learn, and students teach us things. And yeah, what would be your points of view on this generation gaps dealing with technologies on the service design perspective?
Yeah, actually, can I just jump in? Because I also want to ask this question to Renato. Yeah.
Ooh, me.
Yeah, when you're talking the Estonia, this is also the same, because when we're talking in Hong Kong, for Hong Kong, we have the 7 million. But also with talking, okay, Hong Kong might be the opportunity to explore or test some new business, or even like when you show the case in Estonia. But then comes back that some question is if everything is online or digital, how about those aging people? They cannot use a smartphone, they don't know how to use the internet, and then it's unfair to them, right?
Luckily, I'm also teaching inclusive design, so I can have a combination of them both. Estonia, I think it's an extreme case. if I may say, because since 2001, everyone has been basically online. So I think it's they're getting used to that. But when you see, I don't know, here in Thailand, it's still a very big, right, internet usage percentage, I would say. But I'm not sure if it's actually excluding people in a way. We are long life learners, right? Wait, am I saying this right? And the problem is that we are expecting too much adaptation in too much short time. So I think COVID is here just to explain that as well, because suddenly, as we were talking before this, every teacher became a YouTuber. Suddenly, you know, I have a studio at home. This is my classroom, by the way. And it's not easy, but I think the tools are actually, and the services are enabling, I mean, they're simplified in a way that the entry barrier are not super challenging. So I think if you have an internet connection and the will and the patience and a bunch of other kind of features built in, I think it's doable, but that's an optimistic side. Obviously, not everyone has access to internet, to devices anyways. We have seen this on online education right now. It's very challenging, but working around limitations. I don't know if I answered to the question, but
I think you're touching the point. Sylvia, you want to add your idea?
Yeah, that's reason. It's actually this kind of the consideration is what we mentioned. We keep emphasize to our student project. So that's reason you see the two projects we are showing, especially for the Renato project. Actually, in their report is more detailed information. They are talking about, okay, the Renato will say our target group is new millennial. So then we are talking, okay, who are they currently is around like the 20s, right? So how about the 5 years later, if we're talking about some business plan, about the future, better world, right? So they grow up 5 years later, and then 10 years later. Do you also focus on the age from the 20 to 25, or you will move up together with them? So we actually is looking about this generation. If we're talking, okay, this year, they are in the range of the 20 to 25. How they will develop their life in the rest of the 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and 14 years. So each generation, they have their own the pathway because they grow up in different situations. So this actually is a way when we talk with the students, you're talking people-centered. So you look at the people, but it's not a look at your products. If you look at the products, yeah, this car, we focus on, we are SUV, right? Because the driver, the owner enjoy the off-road experience and also the city life. But you are talking particular group of the people, but you don't care about them when they grow up, move into another group. They have to buy another kind of car. So this is something we actually require our students have to thinking about that instead of the product focus. We are talking. I totally agree with when they. I really like Renato when he mentioned about it's not actually technology central. It's technology enabled. Yes, we apply the technology, but we don't want the people to adapting the technology. Instead of technology should serve people. But then as a designer or like the student who learn in this kind of the interdisciplinary content, they need to think in this way. Otherwise, they cannot lead the project or teach or collaborate with our clients to change the life, change the world. Yeah.
I have one more thing to add about that, because we are in design, we are used to developing personas, right? Which would be a representation of a target group. It's been changing from what I've been reading to avoid stereotypes. So if you say, I don't know, yeah, music streaming service, the user is a young adult who blah, blah, blah. So automatically you're excluding a lot of people. So I think that also starts from when you're developing your services or your products anyways, just to look at a bigger picture, not only maybe your core target group, but leaving it a little bit open, so you have your core and your extremes, and then the core target groups.
Yeah, I think that this is also the reason we're talking stakeholder.
Yeah,
because it's not the look at the who are in existing market, who are made relevant in this project based on our previously experts, instead of talking about the whole community and society, and who are relevant to your project and will be the potential direct or indirect stakeholders. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone want to ask something? I will ask from our audience as well. If they need to have some kind of questions, feel free to raise your hand. Okay. Actually, when you're talking about the next generations, or maybe you set up some scenario to solve the problem in the future for your service designs, have you ever think about a kind of COVID situations? I can say it's a kind of disaster in this time as well, because we haven't expect for these situations. So what kind of a plan that we deal with these situations?
That is quite a big question, right?
Yeah.
How much time do we have?
We have plenty of time, so still 30 minutes left.
I mean, just looking at service design as a systemic approach. So it's okay, how do we go from here onwards, but also how to prevent these things from happening again. So it's a sequence of events that led to where we are right now. So I know this is super utopic, super kind of wishful thinking, but it's also learning from the current situation, right? So I'm being very vague on my answer right now.
Do you think that's sorry, Sylvia?
No, I just think during the pandemic, I could see small service design booming because we cannot, for many times, we spend more time at home, during quarantine. So that's actually like in Hong Kong, like the food delivery service, right? It's come to be more and more popular. Before, actually, we always go to restaurant, dining out, and then we come out, and then we have to check the limitation about the people for one table regularly, because the government keep changing the policies for people one table, 6 people one table. Then we make decision. Okay, we eat at home, so we eat gathering, and I have so many new lifestyle. I would see service design is more close to the people's life, as we say, people-centered. So starting from the pandemic, when I talking to my friends worldwide, I know they're starting kind of e-dinner, right? So you can bring your food and eat your food and talking with your friends online. It's not only say what will be the service design that is me. There's so many new lifestyle, and actually we're kind of the new demands from the people's side, which could be a kind of a lot of the I would say again opportunities for us to explore. So that's also the reason I show the IFF project. That is the first cohort working during the pandemic. When you see the video compared with the Renato video, all the students they start in Hong Kong. So the video, all the shooting, all the venues they use Hong Kong. But now we're working at home, different cities. But the thing, the advantages that I see is actually the use of facilities, all the resources in different city, different nation, where the student located. So that's reason IFF video, none of them particular focus in Hong Kong. They are in Shanghai or other cities. It really depends on where the core teams members there. Yeah. But I would see service design is the same, close to the lifestyle, and then the new lifestyle is actually a lot of opportunity for us to explore.
Yeah, I think so as well. All right. อาจารย์ฟ้า do you have more questions or others one if you have more questions feel free to ask.
Yeah, so
As a-
Federico, I think probably you can share because I think somehow Renato also mentioned that yeah, it's hard when you being in the different places and you deal with the system and yeah, probably we have Federico, you want to share your experience living in Italy and then moving to Thailand and what would be your experience on the service design in Thailand?
How much time do we have?
We still have time, 30 minutes
No, so
more.
I will be super honest. Thailand and Brazil are basically the same on the other side of the planet. Lots of bureaucracy, lots of paperwork. Things take time. If you need, I'll give you an example for my vaccination. I got my second dose 3 weeks ago. Don't remember anymore because time is different nowadays. But I got my certificate of my vaccination. It's all in Thai. My name is translated to Thai. It doesn't include my passport number. The field is there, but it's blank. And I don't know what to do with that. So if I have to go anywhere, so that's a systemic approach, right? Because somewhere in the back end, they didn't, or maybe they considered, but something happened back then. And then when I got that, the date of birth of in there, it's wrong. So that potentially could be a fake one. So that's one super specific thing. I have no idea how to fix that because as a citizen or as someone living here, my idea would be contact someone from maybe Thammasat who would contact the government who would try to change that for me. But then they told me when I challenged them what's happening here, oh, don't worry, you will get a letter with everything fixed next week. It's been 2 weeks. So I don't know. I mean, again, paperwork, right? So we hear a lot about Thailand 4.0, so the next stage of Thailand. And I really hope things can move forward towards there. Because sadly, I mean, I have the benchmark, right? So I can compare living in Finland and living in Thailand and Germany. Germany is very bureaucratic. For the internet example, they told me, I said, if I want to move out, what do I have to do? And they said, you have to send us a fax. And I'm like, a what?
Yeah.
What's a fax? So you will encounter a lot of different kind of paperwork, bureaucracies. But again, as I said before, it's because countries are massive institutions that are around for such a long time and slowly developing, right? Whereas, in some other places, the vaccination could be a text message and that's it.
Yeah, I see Iman is crying, one of the students. Yeah, I think it could be the open discussion as well. So we know that the stage of the service design, especially the service side from the government is different wherever you are right now. And probably it's open discussion. You can share the good example, which is easy using people-centric approach. And yeah, it could be a complaint as well.
No, but again, it's very easy to complain, but how can we change it? How can we improve it? In the service design class, it's always easy to identify pain points, but how are you going to solve it? So, and again, it depends on too many different stakeholders and actors in the whole kind of big mesh web. So we can do our part.
Yeah. So yeah, any question from the floor? Otherwise, I think we will finish early, half hours before, so we can enjoy our dinner on time. And I think Kun
Great.
Yam already post the link.
Oh, there is some questions in chat. Oh, okay.
Okay, so if the floor didn't have any questions, so thank you very much for both of our keynote speakers for sharing the fresh perspective, both from Hong Kong and China and also from Estonia, and a little bit of your experience all over the world, Renato. So thank you very much, and thank you for online participants for spending a night with us. And yeah, hope you enjoy the event. So have a good dinner.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye bye.